Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have none other than Steve Nantz. Steve has been around the off-road world for a long time. I believe the first time I met him may have been an ARCA event, but we'll get into all that history. I know that he's been the owner of Moab 4x4 Outpost and now Sandhollow. And we'll get into all that history. So, Steve, thank you for coming on board and being part of Conversations with Big Rich and sharing your life and history in off-road with our listeners.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rich.
So, we've been friends a long time, but there's a lot about you that I don't know, and I'm sure there's a lot out there that would like to know the things that we're going to discuss. So let's jump right into it. And where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is flat, just flat as can be, and which is kind of crazy to get into off-road industry growing up there, but that's where I started.
You know, I always say Wyoming is the Indian word for always windy here.
That's correct. It snows sideways there.
Yeah. So you grew up in Wyoming. That's where you went to school, born and raised, or when did you?
Yeah, pretty much. I graduated high school in Cheyenne, and pretty much immediately after high school, I joined the Navy and did 4 years working on airplanes as a hydraulic mechanic, stationed on a couple aircraft carriers, and actually went to Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I was over there for 2 tours. So.
Oh, wow. So let's go back to those early years in Cheyenne and in school, or in those school years. What was your first foray into the off-road industry or off-roading, or were you a bicycle kid or a motorcycle, ATV?
Yeah, back then I BMX'd a lot. I was actually sponsored by Kuwahara for a period of time, and did a lot of freestyle competition.
Oh, wow.
And my dad bought me a CJ5. That was the first vehicle I ever owned, and so I learned how to shift a manual transmission in a CJ5. So
how old were you then?
Oh gosh, I was probably 14 or 15 years old when I got that Jeep.
Okay.
So I'd go out in the field in front of our house and just practice shifting. And of course, going out in the field, it was kind of off-roading, I suppose. So just really enjoyed it. That was a fun time in my life growing up.
Did you guys off-road before that, hunting-wise or something like that?
No. My dad was an avid hunter, and we'd go hunting, but we didn't really ever off-road. So I didn't really get into off-roading until after I got out of the military. Well, actually, I won't say that. While I was in the military, I started to get into off-roading. So I had the opportunity to buy another Jeep while I was in the military that was all fixed up and lifted and had big tires, and it didn't have lockers or anything like that. But so we'd go out, on our days off and in San Diego, and there's a couple mountain ranges there. We'd go out and have some fun with them. So,
okay. In school, those high school years, Were you into sports or scholastic, or just kind of did your own thing?
I did my own thing, and like I say, I was heavily into freestyle, and BMX riding. So
Okay.
that was my total focus at that period of time.
Do you mind me asking when you graduated from high school?
Oh gosh, that was 86,
80,
1986.
1986. Okay.
Yep.
And then how soon after high school did you go into the military?
So I was in the military. I went in late '88.
Okay.
So I was in 80. Let's see, 88, 89. No, 89, 90, 91, 92.
All right. And that Desert Storm, that was the going into the Middle East with the Iraqi situation, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, I was I wasn't even 20, 21 years old. I was 20 years old at the time. And I remember our captain came on the radio on the aircraft carrier and said, that we just declared war and that we're going to be the first people over there. And so that was a little bit scary for a young kid. But, on an aircraft carrier, you're pretty safe. You're not really in harm's way. So it didn't turn out to be too bad of a deal. War is always a bad deal, but as far as us on the ship,
Right.
it's just more like day-to-day stuff. The only difference is you're loading bombs on the aircraft. So
Okay. And how many years did you rate or do the BMX and freestyle stuff?
I started that when I was young. I mean, probably you know uh grade school.
Oh, okay.
Started riding bikes, and I've always been very creative, and I've always liked to build and work on things. And so I was constantly working on my bicycle and upgrading parts, and doing my research and finding the good stuff and saving my money. And that's just how I've always been my whole life. So
Did you grow up right in Cheyenne, so more suburban city, or was it more out in the country?
no, we were right in Cheyenne.
Right in
So
Cheyenne. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And are your parents still there, or are they still alive?
Both my parents are still alive, and they are in the Greeley, Colorado area
Oh,
now.
okay. Okay, excellent. What made you do with the military choice, the Navy?
I knew I wanted to work on aircraft or airplanes. For some reason, that's just something that I wanted to pursue. And I don't really know why I chose the Navy, other than I knew I wanted to work on aircraft, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to be on an aircraft carrier.
Okay.
So,
And what carrier or carriers did you were you on?
so I was on the Constellation, and then we moved to the Independence.
Okay. And the time that you were during the Iraqi Desert Storm, so day to day, you said that it was loading bombs and maintenance of airplanes and things like that. But you guys, at that point, you guys were pretty far offshore.
Yes, yeah, that is correct. I mean, when you're in the Navy, whether you're at war or you're not at war, you do the same things every single day. You basically every day you act as if you're at war, but when you really do go to war, really the only differences are that you're loading live ammunition. So, yeah, we were when we were on the Constellation. Well, I can't remember if it's the Constellation or the Independence, but we did go. Um, we did get pretty close to Iraq. We actually went up into the Strait,
Oh,
and we did it at night and shut all the lights off. And because literally, when you're going through the Strait, they could shoot from shore. I mean, they could literally take a rifle and shoot at the aircraft carrier. And so we went up into there, and we were in there for a period of time. And actually, that was the first time that an aircraft carrier has been up into the Strait for a number of years. So it's kind of a historical thing for the ship.
okay, cool. That's cool. So then you talking about San Diego and doing some wheeling there.
Yep.
The How much time did you spend in San Diego, or were you mostly on ship at sea?
Well, I spent about 3 years in San Diego, and we don't live on the ship. Just when the ship deploys, we go out with the ship. So we're actually stationed. We were stationed in Coronado Island,
Oh,
and so we had a lot of off time when we weren't deployed. I mean, we worked 5 days a week, but we always had weekends off and things like that. So it's kind of crazy. Lived in San Diego for, oh gosh, probably at least 6 months. And, it's always real hazy there. You can't really see a lot. And we had a huge storm blow through. And the next morning got up and like, holy cow, there's mountain ranges all over the place. And so we were like, okay, well, we got the Jeep. So then we just started exploring. And so we started going to those mountain ranges and exploring. And that's kind of really what got me into four-wheeling. So
talk about those early years. What were you driving, and how was it built up, and what did you do to it?
Well, like I say, when I was in the military, I bought another CJ5. It was a Levi edition, and I had 35s and no lockers or anything, but 3-speed transmission, manual transmission. But I tell you, that thing was the coolest Jeep ever, especially at that period of time.
Right.
And we just had a blast. I mean, we would just jump in that thing and go down to Mexico and go down to the beach, go surfing, and go up in the mountains, and we just had a great time in that Jeep. And that's really what brought the love of Jeep, the Jeep brand, to me. I just we had such a good time with that. So
Okay, let's talk about after your military service. Where did you go up, and what did you start doing?
So after I got out of the Navy, I went back to Cheyenne, and I went to Colorado Aerotech, and I've got my civilian AMP license. And then I moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, and was working on helicopters for a number of years. At that period of time, I joined the Mountaineers Jeep Club. And so we started, that was a great club. And I think it still is a great club. I mean, those guys go out at a minimum one time a month, and a lot of times 2 times a month. And so, during the summertime, we'd go up and do some trails around the Fort Collins area. And then wintertime, we'd do a lot of snow bashing, and snow bashing was extremely fun. And we had guys like Rod Pepper was in the club.
Okay.
He's pretty famous.
Yep.
And there was other couple guys in the club that were pretty famous people. And so just had a great time with that club.
Cool. And when did you first start getting into competitive off-road?
So I went to Moab, and I had a YJ, and I think I broke the transfer case, 231 transfer case. So I went to Moab Off-Road and, say, hey, I broke my Jeep, and well, apparently the mechanic was on vacation. And so they said, well, if you want to just use a hoist, you can use a hoist and fix your Jeep. And so I said, okay. So I brought it in and pulled the T case apart and figured out what was wrong with it. And we had to order parts. So I was in Moab a couple days and got the parts. And before I left Moab, the owner of Moab Off-Road was like, you're really good. He's like, would you be interested in a job? And I said, yeah, I think so. I was young, single, and I was a little burned out on working on helicopters, because there's a lot of monotony in aviation. You can't be creative at all. You just do the same thing over and over and over. And so then I decided to move to Moab. And so I literally went home, gave my 2 weeks notice, grabbed all my stuff, and I moved to Moab. And I worked for Rick Sparks over there, Moab Off-Road, for probably at least 5 or 6 years. So, and then during that period of time, that would have been late 90s. And the first rock crawling event was 1998, the BF Goodrich, what they call it, the rock crawling championship. and that was in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Yep.
And so we went to that. I actually spotted for Kevin Hawkins at that event.
Okay.
And then it was just all over. I mean, I was like, I've got to compete. So, and that's literally when I started, was that next year. We built a Jeep at Moab Offroad, which was owned by Moab Offroad. It was, and everybody called it Brownie. At the time, it was a pretty popular Jeep. And then we started competing in that. So
then that you started off at that Bob Hazel event there.
Yep.
And then did you go to the Warren Nationals in Johnson Valley?
We did not.
You did not.
Nope. I did not go to that one. And to be honest, I don't even know why I didn't go. I don't think to be real honest, I don't think I even heard about it. So
yeah, that's all in before the days of the internet, really. I mean,
it was.
The internet was there, but so much of
right.
it, so many of us were not involved in it.
Right. Yep. I did miss that event.
Okay. And with Sparks owning Moab 4x4 and you starting to compete, then how did that transition happen from building, the YJ to the other vehicles? Because I know that you've built some pretty interesting rigs over the years, and right. I'd like to talk a bit about those. Yeah.
So when I worked for Rick, back in that day, nobody had buggies except for Shannon Campbell.
Right.
And he had that Jeep that was called Tinky. So basically it was that flat fender Jeep that was kind of all tubed out. And so, as close to a buggy as you could get back in those days. And so I decided to build a buggy, and, my first buggy was pretty rough, but it was a single seat wide, but it actually was a 2-seat. So it was fighter jet style. So there was a seat behind a seat. And I called that one the Centipede. It was a neon green little buggy. And that buggy was so much fun. I remember going to the first event after, building that buggy, and Shannon was over there and everybody's over there checking it out. And because nobody had built a buggy, and certainly not a single seat buggy. And so everybody was checking it out. And then all of a sudden, within a couple of years, I mean, the buggy revolution started. I mean, everybody was building buggies. So it was kind of cool, to be in that period of time and just watching all the innovation. And of course, the innovation is still happening today with these cars.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is. Yep.
So I remember seeing the Centipede for the first time, and I can see having the person behind you, but the idea that was to take somebody along. They
yes.
couldn't really help you spot from that position, could they?
No. It was, it was purely for my kids. I mean,
okay.
at that period of time, I had, a son and a daughter, and so it was really purely for the kids. I mean, and back then we weren't even thinking about spotters.
Right.
I mean, we had no idea. So that was purely for that. And I just thought it'd be cool to build a tight, small buggy, narrow, and I had a number of years in that car and just really had a blast.
So let's talk about before the competitions, and needing a 2-seater to have the kids in the back, or having a kid with you when you were wheeling, and talk about how you met Laura and, where that happened.
So when I started to work for Rick over at Moab Offroad, Laura was, so the other mechanic, the mechanic who was on vacation when I brought my Jeep in and fixed it, he came back, and his wife was friends with Laura, my wife. And, she's like, oh, you need to come down to the shop and so I can introduce you to this new guy. And so Laura came down and we got introduced, and then we, started dating, and eventually we got married.
Okay. So you got set up by one of the wives of another employee. Yep. Okay, cool.
That's correct.
That's awesome. So you guys lived in Moab, continued to live in Moab. And when did you actually start the Moab Outpost?
Well, so I was working for Rick, and then for some reason we thought, we needed to make more money. I mean, bar none. And so we decided to move to Phoenix. And so we actually spent about 3.5 years in Phoenix. I worked for Four Wheeler Supply in the fabrication shop.
Okay.
And that was when Randy Ellis, he was running the shop, and Rob Bonney was in the shop, and Ian was there. And, that shop bred really good fabricators.
Yeah,
I mean,
it did.
And so I was there during, for 3.5 years during that period of time. And I tell you, those guys taught me so much. And, and then we decided to come back to Moab. And so when we came back to Moab Offroad was kind of at its last, the last days, because Rick he wanted to move. And so he was just kind of really shutting it down. So I went back to Moab, and I was actually working for Chip over at Chip's Grand Tire as their mechanic. And then I had another guy approach me and say, hey, let's open up a 4-wheel drive shop. So we partnered up and opened up Moab 4x4 Outpost. And that was, that was a good run. I mean, 16 years we ran that store, and it was very successful. In fact, to this day, sometimes I wonder why I shut it down, because it was a successful business. And, but, all in all, I just got burned out on Moab. I mean, I knew every crack, I knew every rock, I knew every ledge. And it got to, I started getting to the point where I didn't want to go four-wheeling because I kind of lost the excitement. And so that's when we decided to move to Sandhollow. And
Okay.
so I started this new business, and it's really rejuvenated me and, brought the fun back. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. I did want to know, how the two segues worked.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about those days at the Outpost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, let's even talk about earlier than that. Let's go back to Four Wheeler Supply. Now that
Yep.
was in Phoenix, and
Yes, correct.
like you said, it really was a place that did a lot of fabrication with Randy, and like you were saying. And what was it like working with those guys? Because I know those guys are kind of crazy.
They are all crazy. I mean, and I tell you, we had a blast because we go camping on the weekends, and they'd all get drunk. I never was really a big drinker, but I'd get buzzed or whatever. But we'd go out and just have a blast and go wheeling, and it was really a fun time in our life. I mean, they're great guys. And working for Randy and working with Rob and Ian, they're all such good fabricators. They taught me so much, and they were all very patient. I mean, I had the basics down, but I was not at their level at that point in time in my life. But they got me up to that level and gave me a good push towards what I'm doing today, as far as the creativity and all the things that we need to have for building these buggies.
So let's talk then about Moab Outpost. You move back
Mm-hmm.
to Moab,
Mm-hmm.
and you start the Outpost. What was it like jumping into a business like that in what was then the Mecca of off-roading?
Right. It was scary for me because I'd never owned a business, and and it's still scary for me today, even after all these years of owning a business, because all the pressure is on you, as a business owner. But it was back then, Moab was not as busy as it is now. So it was a struggle back then. Luckily I had learned to fabricate, working with Randy and Rob Bonney and those guys. So I was able to, come into Moab. We opened the business, and I was able to build bumpers and swing away tire racks and rocker guards and, enough stuff to keep us busy. It took a few years for Moab to really kick off. Probably about 6 years after we opened the store in Moab is when Moab really started getting busy. And then from that point on, it was pretty good. Still a very seasonal town. You have 6 to 8 months to make a living for the year. But but it's very lucrative, the 6 to 8 months. And so as long as you saved your money and knew that when you went into winter, you needed that, then you could certainly survive in Moab.
Shelly and I wintered in Moab for almost 90 days. We stayed at Danny Grimes's place. By the way, he was a great roommate because he was never home. But it was awesome being there in the winter. But yeah, the town itself pretty much shuts down. Everybody says closed for remodeling. We'll open again, in like March or, whatever. But people weren't really remodeling because there was never anybody working on the places. They just shut down because there was no business.
Right. Yeah, I always kind of hoped that I'd get to the point where we could just shut down in the winter and go vacation, but we were just constantly, busy with builds and things in the wintertime. So unfortunately, we never got to do that in our business. But yes, a lot of the restaurants and things like that in Moab, they just shut down. And so as a local there, in the wintertime, it's nice in the fact that you don't have, a bunch of people running around. I mean, you can go in the grocery store and get right up to the checkout counter and things like that. But you do also lose out on some of the good restaurants and things like that during the wintertime.
Right. I can remember the last day of that season that we were there, and Milt's was, they had a sale on their hamburgers. And they were 2 for $1 or 3 for $1 or something like that. It was crazy because, they were just trying to get rid of all the meat that they had stored or their supplies so that they could sell out and take off. And it was probably the best burgers I'd ever eaten there was that day or the 2 days where they had that sale trying to get rid of everything.
Yeah, Milt's is a great place. I mean, when we go to Moab, we still go to Milt's.
Yeah, so. Same here. So then, while you were there, I remember a lot of different mechanics that you had or fabricators, and a lot of those guys have moved on to other, their own businesses. I know you brought guys in seasonally, like just for Easter Jeep and stuff. And,
correct. Yep.
Was that always a handful trying to organize all that?
Oh, the logistics of Jeep Safari is just absolutely insane, because, we would literally have to order $100,000 worth of inventory for a period of 7 to 9 days. And so, several months before Jeep Safari, we would start the process. In fact, in January usually is when we would start the process of ordering the stuff, because a lot of times if we'd wait too long and then we'd place a huge order with somebody, they didn't have the inventory. And so we'd have to start in the middle of winter and say, hey, look, we're going to order this much from you. So you need to make sure that you have it. And so basically, logistically, it was very difficult to get all the parts in that we needed. But and then, as far as the staff, I always had probably between 2 and 4 mechanics, at all times. But during Jeep Safari, we'd get up to 7, 8, 10 mechanics. And so luckily I had people, that would call me before Jeep Safari and say, hey man, you need me this year? And I'd be like, yes, please. And so, and they got paid well. I mean, we would in a, 7-day period, they would get paid. It was like over 100 hours. I mean, it was probably closer to 150 hours that they get paid, and most of it would all be overtime. So it was very good for the people that came down to help, and very good for my full-time employees. But it's tough. You come into work at 7 o'clock in the morning and you don't leave until 2, 3 o'clock that next morning.
Because
go home and sleep.
Everybody's there to wheel. They're not there to wait for their car to get done.
No. And that's how we built our reputation in Moab, was that, if a Jeep came in or a buggy or whatever came in that day, if we had the parts, they were fixed that day. They were ready for their trail ride that next morning, because I understand the importance of that, in the fact that, the people come to Moab, they register for the trails, and they want to be out there trail riding. They don't want to be broke down. And so we really, really strived to make sure that, if we had the parts, every car got done that day. And that car, they could pick it up the next morning, and they're ready for their trail ride. So, and we would do probably, I don't know how many we'd do per day. I mean, probably run 50 Jeeps through there a day.
Wow.
And so, during safari, we're there until 2-3 o'clock in the morning every morning. And, we sleep 4 hours, get up, do it again. And I tell you, it's almost, my guys are almost crying mutiny by the end of the week. And, I mean, 6 days of doing that is really tough. I mean, it's really hard. And, but, I always had a good crew, and I had good people to help, and we got it done somehow. So.
You saved me twice.
Yeah.
Once, the first time I think was when you came up to area BFE. I was in that upper
Right.
playground and had split
With
the
the
radiator. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was standing up there, and when it happened, I looked in both directions from where I was at, and I could see the parking lot of area BFE, and I could see, downtown Moab. And I was like, okay, let's see if I have, enough phone service. And I got hold of you, and you were like, well, let me see if I can find a radiator first. And then all of a sudden you found the radiator, and you
Right.
said, okay, I'll be there. And I'm like, well, oh, okay. Because I figured, then I had to call he was trying to get hold of others to come get the parts from you. But you drove up, and actually you wheeled up, and then we got that radiator replaced, and then we got down the hill. And I was like, Shelly was like, okay, what do I owe you? And just come by the shop tomorrow and we'll settle it then. And she was like, what are we going to owe? And I said, I have no idea, but you know what? It doesn't matter. And then you treated us so fantastic with that one, that I was shocked. And, it was amazing. You really helped me out of a pinch on that one. And then when I blew the locker, my ARB seal, I was up in the at the top of Moab Rim at the overlook, and I called you and I said, "Are you busy yet?" And he goes, "You said no. I have a rack open. If you can get down here, we can drive you right in." And I was on a ride with the group, and I said, "All right, I've got a blown locker. I'm leaving." And I was down the trail in like 10 minutes, I think, passing people coming up, and pulled in there and got in there before anybody else. And you guys were able to fix that locker in just a couple of hours. And
Nice.
Luckily
Nice.
it was, during that time, I think it was ARB had their trailer set up too. So they had parts, extra parts and stuff. So that was really nice. Talk about that, how you started the vendor show and everything out there, separately from, of course, what Red Rock was doing.
Well, the thing about the vendor show, the actual vendor show at Jeep Safari, is if you don't register soon enough, you won't get a spot out there.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, some of these vendors would not register, and then at the last minute, they'd call and, hey, do you have space to see your shop? And as long as they were on my property at the shop, I never charged any of the vendors anything to set up. So more and more vendors wanted to come back and just set up at the shop. And so it worked out really nice for us, because that was, parts that we didn't have to inventory during Jeep Safari.
Right.
If the vendors were there, they would bring parts. And if we needed the parts, we'd literally just go out to their booth, we'd buy the part and fix the vehicle that needed it. So it actually worked out good for everybody, to have vendors at our store. So
yeah, because the Red Rock four-wheelers, their vendor show, just being that, was it Thursday and Friday, correct?
Correct.
You could buy product from them. You'd have to find them somewhere else. And most of them were trail wheeling.
Absolutely.
And you'd have to find them at their condo to try to, maybe if they had parts or not. So it was great for businesses, vendors, to get in with you, so that everybody knew where they were at. And like you said, they could bring inventory, and, they could man it during the day while the rest of the crew went out and wheeled. And, I think it worked out really well.
Yeah, some of those vendors would actually just give me the key to their trailer and show me where everything was in the trailer, and they said just write it down, because they're out there to have fun too. And as a vendor at Jeep Safari, you want to be out on the trail because that's where you're going to sell your product.
Yeah.
Showing your product off and talking to people on the trails and stuff. So it's so important for those guys to be out there. So a lot of times they'd give me the key to the trailer, or they would just bring a bunch of product in to our store and say, okay, we'd inventory it all. We put it all, make a display in the store. And then at the end of Jeep Safari, we would just pay them for what we sold, and what, on the product that we wanted to keep. And so it just worked out good for everybody. It allowed the vendors to go out and have some fun, and we were able to, keep people on the trails.
Excellent. And I guess one of the things that I heard that might have precipitated the whole, selling of or closing down of Moab Outpost, and then, moving on to Hurricane. And starting Sandhollow, was all the hotels were trying to buy up any piece of property that they could fit on. And that's one of the things that I think is starting to really ruin Moab. Not that I
agree.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, that, selling to those businesses that are trying to move into Moab is a bad thing. I think that everybody should take advantage of any time somebody comes up and says, here's some cash, I need your property. I don't blame anybody for taking it, but that has really changed the landscape of Moab.
It has. And, and that was kind of the scenario with us. Well, actually a couple of years before we actually decided to sell, I was so burned out on Jeep Safari. I just, every year I was like, I can't do another one. I can't do it. And, and the feeling, Rich.
Yes.
So, these hotel chains, they were just offering ridiculous amounts of money. And so it just worked out to where we were just like, you know what, we're going to do this. And we did it. But, in respect to what you're saying, Moab, with all these hotels coming to Moab, and I mean, Moab has changed in the past 5 years, changed immensely.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but unfortunately the city council, if they could, with the swipe of a pen, cut off all off-roading in Moab, it would take them 2 seconds to do it, because they are so against it. And I could see that coming for, probably 6-7 years. And so at the time when we were thinking about selling, that was something that was, helped us determine to just go ahead and sell.
Right.
Unfortunately, because I hate to say it, but one day, Moab may be shut down. I mean, it might be.
Yeah. To motorized recreation. I agree. I don't know why why they want to cater to the non-motorized groups, because most of those groups do not really spend money.
They don't. They don't.
Off-roaders spend a ton of money in the community, and
absolutely,
most of those hotels are filled with tourists that are just there to maybe experience the river or experience mountain biking. Or even still, the off-roaders are the ones that fill the hotels. They fill the condos. All those people camped around the river, or up in the open areas. Those are the same people that forage the grocery store. That's the craziest stuff I've ever seen during safari is, these river rats, or, rock hounds, or whatever you want to call them, the rock climbers and the mountain bikers, you can tell their look as opposed to an off-roader. And so many of those just forage the grocery store. And what I mean is they'll go grab a bag of chips, or they'll go in, and I saw a guy break off all the stems on the mushrooms and buy just the mushroom heads and leave the stems.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he did it to probably 50, 60 of the mushrooms.
Huh.
And I was just amazed. There was a guy standing there with his, I could tell he was a river rat. And they were standing around talking about to 5 or 6 different people. And he had a bag of chips that he was passing around to everybody. And I walked by and I looked at him with, contempt in my eyes, I guess. And he was like, "Hey, you want some?" And I was like, "No, I'll buy some first." But they just sit there and eat and then don't even purchase what they ate.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's what the city council wants.
Yeah, I don't understand what the city council wants, to be honest. I mean, I think they want it to be, they want people to be bussed in, go in their hotel rooms, and then during the day go to the state parks, and then be bussed back to their hotel rooms and go in their hotel rooms. I think that's what the city council wants. And it's a shame because Moab's a beautiful place, and it really is the Mecca of four-wheeling. I mean, it's just so beautiful out there. And so, but the BLM is still pretty good. They fight against it. And, the crazy thing to me is a lot of the businesses, they do not fight against the city council.
Right.
I mean, if I was a business in town, a restaurant owner or a hotel guy or, whatever, I would be like, no, we want off-roaders. We want these guys here because that's what brings economy into Moab. And, and it just surprises me on how many businesses would be right there with the city council to shut it all down if they could.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me,
I agree. I remember one time Shelley and I walked into, and I normally don't name businesses in this kind of a situation, but I will. Mm-hmm. And we went into the bistro, Moab Bistro. Oh, yeah. They're in that little park area right behind Zach's.
Right.
And we had been wheeling. I don't remember what we did. We did a trail ride with somebody, and we thought, well, let's go try this place. Everybody else seemed to be really packed, and they weren't. And so we parked there. There's like 3 or 4 cars. We walk in, and the lady walks over to us and looks us up and down, and says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, we'd like a table for 2." She looks around. And she looks back at us and she goes, "It's going to be about an hour and a half." Now, there was like 2 groups of people sitting in that restaurant. Oh, right. Nobody else was in there.
Right.
And I was like, you just judged us on how we're dressed on whether or not you want us in your restaurant. And right. I was absolutely amazed. I said, "Okay, great. Thank you for, considering us." And we turned around and walked out. And ever since then, I've told everybody that's motorized recreation, right. That place doesn't want anybody unless you're dressed to the nines or something. I don't know what it is. Maybe she saw us drive in the beat up, clapped out, Cherokee, but, I had enough cash to eat there.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been a $200, ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And they turned us away.
And that's what I don't understand about these businesses. That's what they're trying to do is just turn people away. And it makes no sense to me. That's not a good thing to do as a business. But, and back to people living, river rats and things like that. I actually had a mechanic one time that was a great mechanic. And he worked for me probably 6, 7, 8 months. And I found out he was living in a cave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually found a cave out there. It was living in a cave.
Wow.
And but he loved it. He was a guy that just loved to camp and he was a great guy. But he was one of those guys that wouldn't spend money if he didn't have to. But I love the guy, and unfortunately he passed away in a rock climbing accident. He's a big rock climber, and but that just reminded me of him when you were talking about that.
Yeah, I know that it's really hard to get. Everybody I talk to that owns businesses there, they have a really difficult time keeping employees. And it's not because the work is hard or they don't pay well. It's because people are there to recreate. And so every 2 weeks, they go through employees because the employee works for 2 weeks, gets a paycheck,
right,
heads out to the river, doing whatever it is they're doing there. And then when they run out of money, they go get a job somewhere else. Because
Yeah.
there's so many places looking. I mean, I saw $18 an hour to start at McDonald's in Moab.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody that's complaining about not getting, $15 an hour in downtown Detroit in a McDonald's, why don't you just move to Moab, get 18, and a lot better. You won't get shot at.
That is true. And with that being said, I had to pay my employees good because literally all my employees I had to import.
Right.
I tried a couple locals and they never worked out. For some reason, the Moab locals don't want to work. But so I would always have to pay my guys good and import them from other states, and then just cross your fingers that they would stay with me. And most of my employees stayed with me for, quite a long time. Every once in a while you'd get one that wouldn't stay very long, but for the most part, we had a good crew over the whole time we were there. So.
Right. So then you moved to Sandhollow.
Yep.
And started Sandhollow Offroad.
Mm-hmm.
And that business has kind of transitioned from when you first got there to what you're doing now. Is that?
Yeah.
I know that you really like the fabbing end more so than the bolt-on end.
Yeah, when you fabricate, you be creative and you have to think about things, and not just about the thing that you're working on, but the whole picture. You got to think about the whole buggy. How is this going to affect that? And, in the end, how is it all going to work together? So that's what I do really enjoy. But, on a business standpoint, obviously we still do repair work because that's easy cash flow. And we still have people that come out and break and they need that repair work done. So, but here, compared to Moab, we did almost all Jeep work. We did, 90% Jeep work or repair work and 10% buggy builds. And here it's completely opposite. And it was really a shock to me because when we opened Sandhollow Off-Road, I ordered a bunch of inventory, the Jeep inventory and stuff that we would have in Moab. I ordered all that and I had a bunch of stuff in the showroom and none of it sold. And so here it was just completely opposite. Now we're doing 90% buggy builds and 10% repairs, and which is fine with me, because that is what I enjoy doing. But the repair work, I think Sandhollow will be the next Moab eventually.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. And I could see that also and that was another factor when we were thinking about selling the property in Moab was, I knew I could see Sandhollow and I could see that, every year we'd come out here on vacation and get just a little busier. And even in the 4 years that I've been here, it has just exploded. There are so many people that come out here now. The people that used to go to Moab and, they're burned out just like I was. These people, they knew every trail in Moab, they knew every rock, they knew everything. And so now they're coming out here, and Sandhollow is just such a new and incredible area. So I think eventually, I'm crossing my fingers, but I think eventually the business will get to the point where we're doing a lot of buggies and then we're doing a lot of repair work. So,
yeah, I agree. Especially as more of the groups, in Moab you have Easter Jeep, but then you had, the Zook Melt or whatever they called it, and then you had the Toyota and the Bronco runs, and
right.
Moab was always that place where those specific vehicle type runs or clubs would come. And I think Sandhollow is becoming that way more and more and more as well.
It is, even on a corporate aspect. Some of the big, and I won't name any names, but several of the big companies that produce vehicles are now doing all their testing out here and doing all the stuff out here, where they used to, for years and years and years, would go to Moab and do it. But unfortunately, Moab has gotten unfriendly to these people. And so now they've decided to come up here and start doing all their stuff in this area. So, it's literally just a matter of time until this is the next Moab. It is. So.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I'm glad that there is another place, and the BLM in that
Hmm.
area seems to be easier to work with, and State Park definitely is. So
Right.
that's,
Right.
that's good to see.
Hmm.
So what's in the future for Steve and Sandhollow Off Road?
Well, I want to keep competing. That's just something that I enjoy. So I'm in the process. Unfortunately, I usually build a vehicle before I sell a vehicle, but my last rock buggy, I got a pretty good offer on it, so I sold it. And so I've been without a vehicle for about a year now, and I've got all the parts, but no time. That's the problem. But
Right.
I am gonna start putting this car together. I will have it done by Trail Hero. And I want to keep competing, and I want to just keep pushing this business. I'm not ready to get out of it yet. I mean, I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy the area. All the fun has come back to me since we moved here to Sandhollow, and so I'm rejuvenated and excited, and we're just going to keep pushing forward, with everything that we're doing.
Excellent. And you're are you still in the same building there, or plan on being in that building, or are you going to do something else?
No, we unfortunately the good building that we were in that was right by Sandhollow got sold, and we got kicked out of it. And so now we're in a temporary shop. I've got a 3-year lease in this shop, but really ultimately what I want to do is get a piece of property somewhere on Sandhollow Road or maybe State Street and put up my own building.
Okay.
So that's what we're pursuing right now.
And that makes sense. That
Yep,
makes sense, because that way you can control your own destiny.
absolutely. And then you're building equity and you're not throwing money away with rent.
Correct. And God, I can't believe so many people don't understand that.
Yeah,
And I know it's tough when you're just starting out in a business to be able to roll enough cash out, or, finance, a building and property and all that. But it
right.
makes such a big difference.
It's huge. I mean, when the time comes to retire, most businesses aren't worth a whole lot of money. But where you're going to make your money is in your real estate. And so anybody out there that is thinking about, doing a small business, I would highly suggest investing in your property. Buy some property, put up a building, keep it nice, and then down the road when you're ready to retire, that building is going to be worth something.
Right. And especially if you can keep it so that the building can be multiple use,
Yeah.
so it's
Yep.
not just, like a restaurant or
Hmm.
a car dealership. Car dealerships can be turned into automotive repair facilities, but typically they have these huge showrooms that, that don't do any good for most
Hmm.
businesses. But,
Hmm.
you can drive around and see all these businesses that have closed, and what kind of facility that they had and that aren't selling. I mean, I wouldn't want to
Right.
be in commercial real estate right now, especially in office space.
Right. Right.
After this COVID thing, everybody's working from home, and office spaces, companies are just saying, hey, this is a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
did COVID slow you down?
No, no, we had so when COVID hit, we probably had a year's worth of work as far as just buggy builds.
Wow.
And so, of course, the federal government deemed automotive repair as um,
Essential
an
business?
essential business. So we just kept working, and thank goodness I had all the parts that I needed, and so we were able to just work through the whole thing. I mean, it didn't affect us at all until recently, until probably the last couple months after, you know, since COVID. It's hard to get parts now because a lot of the big manufacturing companies did have to shut down, and so now everybody's struggling to get various parts, and it's not the manufacturer's fault. They had to shut down, and that's just how it is.
Or
So
somewhere along in their supply chain, somebody had to shut down.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Right. So, for instance, I ordered some third members not too long ago, and it took a couple months to get them. And, axle housings, 2.5 months, where, before COVID, you could order that stuff and it was probably maybe a 3-week period. So, big difference in time.
Right. And you just have to build that in when you talk to your customers now. Like you
I
said,
do.
the work that you had scheduled, you had the parts for, and now you're getting into the newer scheduled vehicles, and you don't necessarily have all the parts on the shelf.
Yeah,
So,
we're still setting pretty good. I still have 3 cars to build, including my car. So 3 cars total, which I'm doing pretty good on parts with those cars. And then the jobs that I'm bringing in now, I'm just telling the customers, hey, look, it's going to take 2 to 3 months to get all the parts we need to start your car. But my schedule is booked out 3 to 4 months right now anyhow. So it's all going to flow together and be just fine.
good. Excellent. Yep. So then Sandhollow Offroad, and Steve Nantz and the Nantzes are going to be a solid thing in the future then. We'll
be here.
That's awesome. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to discuss or share with the people? Any stories from those early days of rock crawling that stick in your mind, or that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, there's so many stories and so many memories, I mean, back, when we first started with, building our first Jeep for the first, in the early 2000s, we built tube fenders and did things that nobody else was doing. And now you look at all these companies, Genrite and various companies like that, doing tube fenders, so, it's really neat to see people be innovative, and it's really neat to see the sport grow, and as far as, growing in numbers, and then as far as technology, there's just, I mean, so many neat memories being there from the beginning until now. I can't tell you all of the stuff, but there's just a lot of neat stuff there.
So one question I have is, I have another Cherokee that we're in the process of building, or have been for a couple of years, and it looks like I'm going to be getting it back from the motor swap here pretty soon. And good. I'm looking for the same kind of bumpers that you made, those really low profile XJ bumpers. Is that something that you still have all the prints and can do, or do I need to go to somebody else?
No, I do. I have all those. I have all those drawings. We haven't built those in a number of years, but I do have the drawings, and I do still have the capability of duplicating those exact bumpers.
Cool, because I'll be honest, those are the sweetest XJ bumpers out there.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, the thought that went into those is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I had a business partner, Andy Murr, who went to engineering school and things like that, and he designed a lot of our product line, and those bumpers were outstanding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good, Gus. I'm glad I can get another set, because I didn't want to have to cut the old black and red XJ, the 92, up to put those parts back over onto the 98. So gotcha. Good. Yep. As soon as I'm going to have to call you up and let you know that, that I'm going to need them here shortly.
Awesome. Very good.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I want to say thank you for coming on board with Conversations with Big Rich and sharing your history and some of your insight on off-road. And, it's been a pleasure. And I want to say thank you for the friendship that we've had over the years, especially probably the last 15 or 16 years. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that we've met, and I'm glad that, we've got this wonderful 4-wheel drive family that we have. And I absolutely love you and Shelly, and, I hope the best for you.
Well, we hope the best for you too. And thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.